Hello, hello.
Hey, nice to talk to you again.
Oh, yes, absolutely. How are you, Vaush? Are you doing well?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Lots of international stuff happening right now. There's Venezuela, Israel, of course. I didn't even get a chance to look into Ethiopia and Eritrea. I'm sure you keep up
Yeah,
with a lot of stuff.
I mean, I get burnt out. Trust me,
That's
I have only so much time and so much brain that I can't keep up with everything. I rely on friends and a lot of posters to also get information sometimes. And I also rely on, I don't know, like a backlog of knowing a few things. You're looking real drippy, I gotta say.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is like the coziest jacket physically possible, I assume. I love it, and the pockets are massive. Oh, by the way, there are people in chat with a bad memory. Could you remind them that you are a friend of the stream?
Sure, sure. Hi, chat. I am Richard Hannay at Richard Hannay17 on Twitter, and I have spoken to Vaush originally something like a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer, about the Golden Dawn, the rise and fall of the Golden Dawn in Greece.
Hmm.
And ever since, we've spoken a few times about the war in Ukraine, what's happening there, what may happen there in the future. Of course, I'm not a medium. I can only, I don't know, find out and I don't know, predict so much, right? But now I feel that it's a good time to talk about what's happening in Israel Palestine, and just the absolute hell that has been the past month plus of my existence. We have a lot of war crime experts suddenly popping up, just incredibly at an incredible pace. I have never seen so many people immediately understanding and knowing what a war crime is, and knowing when a target is and is not militarily justified. I have no idea where suddenly all this expertise came from.
Yeah,
I
we've
think,
we've reverted to like
yeah.
a World War II era strategic bombing initiative where all targets are actually valid strategic targets because they, were in the those guys might have liked the guys we were trying to kill. So they were basically combatants.
Yeah, don't tell anybody that the strategic bombing campaigns of World War II would be considered illegal today under international law. It wouldn't be too nice. It's like it ruins the argument a little bit. Do you want me to turn on my camera?
Yeah, go right ahead. Let me-
All right, all right. Hello.
Hello. Let me
Right.
pop the thing out. Da-da-da.
Hi, stream. Hi, chat.
It'll take me a second to put you on. I'm still trying to find out which of
Sure,
these buttons does the pop out. Hide chat.
of course.
Unfocus, remove. Did they move it? Oh, there it is. No, wait, that's share your screen. Pop out. There it is. Oh my god. Sorry, I've gotten used to using Zoom for the
Mhm.
for streamed conversations. I've completely forgotten the Discord layout. Uh
Hey, I mean, we all were forced to learn Zoom, right? And then immediately forgot it the moment it became pointless. Kind of.
Zoom sucks so much. I hate Zoom.
I like Google Teams.
I never used it.
Is it Microsoft Teams? Microsoft Teams. I'm a little bit behind the curve on this stuff. Discord is plenty good for me, I would say.
All right, we got you up.
All right, sick. Um, Yeah, so I don't think I'll be sharing my screen that much. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation this time, but I do have a list of notes of things that I might want to go through.
Absolutely. My my coverage of what's been going on in Israel has been focused, I would say, primarily on like IDF spokesperson stuff. Like a lot of it's been more like the propaganda war, basically, because the actual specifics of the conflict, I think, I've seen so much contested information. The main thing that I know in terms of what's going on is that there be a lot of bombings. Um, they sent the Palestinians down to the southern portion of the Gaza Strip and since enclosed the northern part of it. And they've been doing this kind of like bulldozer strategy of essentially like eliminating it block by block. And now they're probably going to do the same thing to the south.
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of things to say about the military strategy. But I would like to start a little bit by I mean, first of all, mentioning the spokespeople. Holy shit! There are so many nut jobs that are coming out in Israeli social media, especially the Israeli far right, like guys like Ben Gvir, right?
Uh-huh.
Arming settlers, saying that we should like cleanse Gaza, saying that like all manner of advocacy for genocide. And then there's like the whole all like a back and forth between Netanyahu and Biden that can't be good. Like that background conversation can be nice because Biden isn't thrilled about this whole situation, even though he's like signaling public support. Even
Oh no,
still,
you
apart
know
from all
he's like
this, yeah.
seething in the background right now. Yeah, for
Oh
sure.
my god. Oh my god, I can't even start. So I want to start I want to start with specifically war crimes because this has really pissed me off. It's the idea that, oh, there is a Hamas militant in an X place that makes that place a military target, and therefore it justifies a strike on that target. That is absolutely not how international law works on this field.
Are you sure? Because I've
Guy,
seen a lot of people on Twitter say that is how it works, and I don't know. I'm starting to get won over a little bit.
yeah, so here's the whole thing. When you are trying to figure out if a military strike is or is not, especially in aerial bombardments, if a strike is or is not legal, you have to consider distinction between civilian and military targets, which can exist in that case, military value, and proportionality, right? So here's the idea. If you're striking like a military base, right? And you kill like say 100 fighters in their barracks, and you also get like a couple of janitors or like a bunch of personnel that's delivering pizzas or whatever, you could justify that the military value of that strike and the unforeseeable consequences on civilians or the foreseeable consequences on civilian targets are, out the military value outweighs the killing. So you can do that in that case. But when there's like one Hamas militant, even if they're like a Hamas leader, in the middle of a refugee camp, and you decide that, you know what, that refugee camp, I'll drop a 2,000-pound bomb on there. I don't know if I'm even gonna hit close to the guy. I'm gonna kill like 300, 400 people, and then claim, hey, there was a Hamas guy there. Just trust me. What you gonna do? Like, that's not how
Yeah,
anything works.
Israel has basically not even been providing intel on the or like justification for their strikes. There were a bunch of initial strikes that essentially just hit journalists' private houses, and they were just like, yeah, well, whatever. Like there's not even like a pretense. I genuinely feel like, and you can correct me if you think that I'm overstating this. I feel like Russia put more effort into pretending they were only hitting military targets than Israel has.
Effort into pretending, perhaps, but I think that the how discriminate Russia and Israel were in their strikes is actually kind of similar. I
I
would
agree.
say like the way the Russians acted in Mariupol could be like the Russians could very easily use the same arguments, even like no matter their validity, right? Because of course you could argue, oh, okay, the Ukrainians weren't using like civilian infrastructure to the same extent, blah 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 blah. That all does not matter. What matters here is that like technically speaking, Hamas, like its military like infrastructure and whatever else it has, like it will matter very little in terms of military value striking those targets and killing them. Like in terms of like the threat they pose to Israel at the moment, at like Israeli civilians at any given time, it isn't actually that grave at the moment because of all the security measures. But what is grave is the threat that a 2,000-pound bomb poses to Palestinian civilians when you try to kill one or two Hamas guys by using sometimes AI targeting. Apparently, they've
I saw
decided to
that.
like.
Yeah. How? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it's so inhuman, the idea of like even for something like a direct strike, you would delegate that to just essentially like an RNG generator, or I guess that's
Yeah,
redundant
like
RNG. Yeah.
delegating that, like in terms of legality, like oh my god, like you can forget the legal justification for such a strike. Now, I want to stress that this is not just like me, Richard, the military boy, like saying that like the Israelis are being indiscriminate in their bombardment. The Americans have been fairly clear that the Israelis are being indiscriminate in their bombardments, right? I have this like really interesting quote
Mhm.
by John Kirby. I don't know if you've heard it. Let me read it to you.
I've played a
It,
few Kirby
it's
games.
yeah. All right. So this is John Kirby on Israeli efforts to minimize civilian casualties. So it's from the NSC, right? John Kirby says we have some indications that there are efforts being applied in certain scenarios to try to minimize, but I don't want to overstate that.
Yeah,
Can
we
you
respect. I want to acknowledge that Israel is trying. Maybe.
Hey, this is government speak for okay, guys. Like they say they maybe are trying, but they're not really trying. Like they clearly are not respecting civilian lives with these strikes, and you don't even have to trust the Americans here, based on what the Israeli side says about their own strikes. You have to really wonder like what the is going on the communication level, right? Because they claim to have killed, say, around 5,000 Hamas militants, right?
Which is complete bullshit. 100% bullshit.
Which, like, of course, it cannot be substantiated. I think it's way less than that personally, but of course, I can't prove it. But even then, let's take them at their word. 5,000 Hamas militants with 15,000 strikes. The math is a little problematic here, right?
Look, they're just
That
very strong, okay? They need multiple shots to take down.
that would mean that there's like maybe 1 in 3 strikes even kills a Hamas militant. If we're taking them at their word, they've destroyed like maybe around half the buildings in Gaza. Like they're clearly not like working with any like the United States would blush, especially the United States the way it acted like in near-term conflicts. We're not going back to Laos or Cambodia, but near-term conflicts, the United States would tell you, "Oh my God, what are they doing? That's way too brutal." Also, like using artillery shells to kill Hamas civilians. I see literally no Hamas civilians. Sorry, Hamas militants. Right?
Mhm.
I see no justification for that personally because Hamas doesn't have heavy equipment. Right? They don't have heavy fortifications. They have their tunnels, but the tunnels aren't going to be destroyed by artillery fire. They're going to be destroyed by bunker busting bombs or by, let's say, I don't know, like special forces teams going into the bunkers. Using artillery shells, all that it does, like considering like the really wide range at like which a 155 millimeter artillery shell can kill people, right? And how inaccurate artillery fire can be. Like you throw a 155 millimeter shell in a street and it will kill in a radius of 150 meters, and that shit gets more inaccurate the further away you fire from. So like the idea that this is like some kind of surgical like strike to kill Hamas and protect civilian life is ludicrous. It is ludicrous based on what Israel is saying. It is ludicrous based on what the Americans are saying. It is ludicrous based on what any common observation of the military campaign so far is like could possibly suggest. So yeah.
You would agree, given the evidence that we have at the moment, that even just available as civilians, not even as people from the State Department, that like the Israel is engaging in a reckless disregard for human life and has like no plan moving forward that doesn't seem like outwardly eliminationist. Like because I guess
We're getting to the plan.
yeah, because it seems like the State Department might, for political reasons, have to keep quiet about their specific intent. But I get the feeling that at the department there are a lot of people there who are just like internally they know that Israel's plans are just to like kill or get rid of all of them. Just like not even a good plan. Like they don't even have a well thought out strategy for it. It's just something that they want to do.
before I think that
I
before
know
getting
that's a
to the
loaded
plan,
question.
yeah, no, I get that. Don't worry. I will get to what I think their plans are, or like the idea, like could we like genocidal acts XYZ. Before I get to that, I would like to mention a couple more things. The Israeli evacuation orders are insane, right? Like you can't tell a million people, hey, jump into grid X or Y, like move around this quickly. No. None of this is legal. None of this gives pretext to it just gives pretext to Israel to bomb a place and then say, well, we told them to evacuate.
Yeah, we warned them. Yeah.
That's not how it works. You can't say, I'm warning you, I'll shoot you, then shoot, and then say, well, I warned him. Like, it's not his fault. You still shot him. So, like, none of this like exempts Israel from like taking care, like, to minimize civilian casualties, and the Americans know that very well. So, like, all of this. Like they also like the recent one that I saw. Did you see this one with Al Mawasi?
Um,
Uh,
I may or may
so
not have.
they one recent pamphlet told told civilians in Gaza that that Al Mawasi will be like a safe area, and it's like it's like a tiny strip of desert, like in one part of
Oh, right.
the
Yeah, it's like a death zone. Yeah, there's not. You tell a
nothing
bunch of
there.
people to go there, they're just going to die.
I mean, people aren't gonna go there. Like the I think that like if you told them if they went there, they'd die. So they're not gonna go there. So they're gonna end up getting killed by like Israeli like the Israeli military with their strikes, and then they're gonna be like, hey, well, we told them to go to the safe zone. That's not how anything works. There's like humiliation of captives, like anything that, like all the things going on in the West Bank as well. Like the laundry list of war crimes here is just like mind-boggling to me, at least, because there's so much defense being played right now for these acts that no reasonable person would do for like any other state. Um, yeah, so I would you like to me to talk a little bit about the military situation in terms of, okay, like what are the outlooks, what the broader plan is, let's say.
Yeah, certainly. Because it seems, at least the impression that I'm getting is that Israel hasn't even put forward an argument for what they're going to do in a non-genocidal context. Like there's nothing they can point to and go like, "Oh no, our plan is to do this." Like they're not even pretending that there is any kind of end game plan, you know?
So
That's my
yeah,
impression at least.
they have been incredibly vague on the idea on what their end game is, and the Americans aren't helping by telling them, well, this is what you're not going to do, but not really putting any enforcement mechanism or threatening any aid or supply to Israel. Like they just tell them shit like, hey, don't be as indiscriminate in the south of Gaza when you invade that, when you push people from like from Khan Yunis all the way to Rafah. Like, don't be as indiscriminate. Then Israel just goes, okay, and then they just like continue being just as indiscriminate. But I think that the idea was, at least at first, this has to be like there has to be a response, and there has to be like there was mostly like a reprisal operation. The way I saw it is like, we're gonna go in, we're gonna like destroy Hamas, we're gonna like kill like whoever is like sympathizing, like not directly, but like we're gonna fuck them up. Let's say
We're gonna fuck them up,
that was
yeah.
yeah, that was the original idea. But here's the problem, right? They can't really destroy Hamas, completely destroy Hamas. They could theoretically win militarily, right? Like Israel is much more powerful. Still, it would be a bloody battle in like having to do like with urban guerrilla warfare in tunnels. Hamas has been supplied pretty heavily through arms smuggling of like anti-tank weapons, their own like domestic like little bespoke weapons have grown. But even then, even if you defeat like the Hamas military, all you'll end up doing is creating an insurgency long term. The leadership of Hamas is in Doha. right? It's elsewhere. It's not in Gaza. The militants, all they have to do really is just take off the militant uniform, and they just end up being like blending amongst the civilians. It is not this. There's not going to be this reckoning of like the formal surrender of Hamas. Like consider this like insanity. It's not going to happen. Even if they completely occupy Gaza, they're going to have to deal with an insurgency, and that would be ruinous. Like with in so many ways. It would be incredibly unpopular in Israel as well. It would be incredibly unpopular with the United States that have said, though, there shouldn't be an occupation, there should be some sort of other settlement. But then again, like when I hear Netanyahu say, oh, like according to reports, that is, I don't know if this is 100%, but like he was like, oh, we have to like thin out Gaza. In my opinion, with all this bombing, the idea is that they want to push the Palestinians closer and closer to the border with Egypt, intensify bombardments, and force them essentially to flee across to Rafah. And they assume, in my opinion, that the Egyptians may not shoot them, or they may let them through, and they end up like with say a Gaza Strip that has a third of the people. Now, this idea like of like an easy solution, ethnic cleansing, is insane.
Slightly war crime. Very slightly.
Not only is it like a massive war crime, it's also the fact that even in this ideal world where Egypt is like, you know what, they are war refugees, let's open the borders. Egypt doesn't fully control the Sinai Peninsula. ISIS runs rampant there. So there's no reality in which these people get out in the Sinai and they are suddenly safe. None. None whatsoever. They get out in the Sinai, they either die of exposure or get slaughtered. There's like, if this happens, which I really don't know, because I don't think the Israelis have such a concrete plan. They're mostly like, hey, forget about it. We're going to push them closer and closer to Egypt and see what happens. Like I really don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, I would
that's what I mean. It seems like the current plan of action isn't just like they're faking, because again, like my comparison here is Russia, right? Russia has like a fake, not as evil plan, right? It's the whole 3-day military operation. We were going to strike Kiev as a way of like, you know, putting an end to the resistance preemptively, but then we were liberating the Russian people. Now that was all bullshit and was still evil and blah blah, but that was at least their narrative. That was a narrative for what they were doing that they could point to explain how they weren't completely evil. But it doesn't seem like that's the case here, because like you've said, like, you know, you've got like 2.3 million people now in the southern portion of the Gaza Strip, and they're going to get pushed south, and Egypt said they're not taking them. So, you know, there's like, what's the plan? And you know, the Biden administration is asking this too. They're like, can we get something? You know, is there anything on the table here? And I really think that Netanyahu and his cronies just want to kill them all. I think that they want to sort of sandwich them against the border and just, you know, then there's just like a media blackout, and a week later, you know, Hamas forced us, we had no other way, blah blah, and now they're all dead.
Okay, this will be a bit speculation on my part.
Of course, and that's all we can really do here. Even the Biden administration speculating.
It is genuinely a very hard thing to just say, okay, the plan's genocide, because it's just such a difficult thing to prove. However, there are like steps towards a genocide that can be taken, and certain of those steps definitely have been taken. And you don't like I think that the intent is we want to get rid of them. We want to deal with this problem. We want to find, let's say, a solution. I am like slightly joking here, but it is atrocious.
Yeah, it's that's kind of where we're at, you know.
But I like, okay, they have destroyed the infrastructure of the Gaza Strip. They've cut off like electricity. They have done like they cut off water and they were forced to resume it due to international pressure. I think that international pressure is keeping Israel from just saying, you know what, like line people up and shoot them. I think that like both also public opinion in Israel wouldn't be happy if it was like actual, okay, let's set up concentration camps and do this like really a systematic like killing. So it's more of like, okay, we're gonna take a target that has like 400 people around it. We're gonna strike that target and say, well, 400 people died, whatever. There was a military target there. So there is like, let's let people die by exposure through like by restricting aid, by destroying infrastructure, by telling them that safe zones are in X or Y or Z place. So you can definitely make an argument for genocide, but I think that you don't even have to go that far. Like all the war crimes taking place are, for me, in way enough for not only the international community but also like the strongest backer of Israel, the United States, to like put significant pressure on them, because this is not politically good for Biden. Like,
No, it's
in no
miserably
way.
bad. Yeah.
It is miserably bad, and I don't know what he thinks will happen if he continues, like if he doubles down on this. Like, what, things will suddenly get better? Like, no, they're not gonna get better. Like, what are the Palestinians gonna get returned to the places that were just bombed into like rubble? No. Are they just gonna be all squeezed into Rafah? Are they gonna occupy the strip? What's going to happen? In my opinion, the only way this ends in a non-genocidal fashion is if the United States genuinely puts a ton of pressure on Israel to either like give up on this or accept that, like, okay, we're dealing with a Hamas insurgency in the future, like let's say in a year or whenever this whole thing may resolve itself, because they're also dealing with a miserable military situation on the ground, having to deal with like the dense urban environment of Gaza. Let's put all that aside. Um, there is this like idea that maybe they bring back the PA, maybe they do something else, maybe it's a UN thing. But to me, it's very clear that the US doesn't want Israel to occupy Gaza. They don't want Netanyahu in power. They don't want they don't want like the complete like annihilation of the Palestinian people in Gaza. So the US is putting pressure very inconsistently without a plan of their own. The Israelis don't have a plan. Specifically, the Netanyahu's cabinet, their only real plan is, okay, we're doing reprisals. We're trying not to lose the Americans. Okay, let some aid here, let some aid there, but
Constant,
you wouldn't
non-stop
know.
Israeli propaganda directed at English speakers. You
Yeah,
know?
let's convince the world that what we're doing is okay and or justified. It's not. Like none of this is okay. And sure, like you might say, oh, we're not a genocide yet. Fair enough. Okay. Well, I could see that argument, but the point is that like I wouldn't want to wait until that's the case. I would want the Americans to put pressure on Israel to like cool it a little bit. And I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, well, you can't really do that because, well, now they've started a whole thing, and if they pull back, like this is going to be a huge win for Hamas, perhaps." But the whole thing is that like you can't just destroy Hamas. You have to stop, like, end the conditions that create another Hamas. So you can't create a permanent occupation. You can't. You have a pressure cooker. You can't like keep fanning the flames in the pressure cooker and hoping that something will change. You can't keep putting on the screw on the Palestinian people and hoping that, well, maybe they'll like submit.
Yeah,
That's not how people work.
at the very least, because like if the hammer coming down does happen, it's going to happen very quickly. At the very least, I think it's sensible to say that the current actions of the Netanyahu regime are genocidal in the sense of like that's what's being built towards, like the everything, all the machinations, like no other pretext for what's going to be done with the Palestinians, the constant dehumanizing language, the apparent intent to like pacify or cleanse or purge the Gaza Strip. If nothing else, he's definitely doing the things that a person would do right before killing or expelling an enormous number of people,
Yeah, I would say that a bunch of people in his cabinet, in his administration, are explicitly genocidal. He doesn't want to take that step, and like, and obviously, like, there can't be the organized, like, let's put them in concentration camps and like kill them all kind of violence. But like any, like many of the possible outcomes here, and in what is basically a disorganized genocide, like the pushing of the Palestinians into the Sinai Peninsula, which is like a genuine like possibility that is being discussed by like military people, like and like journalists and everybody else. Like, okay, this is maybe where things are going. That is a genocidal like act.
And which
Yeah.
one which Egypt definitely does not want to be like, participatory in.
But the thing is, even if Egypt wants or doesn't want, it doesn't matter. If that many people try to cross the border, the Egyptians won't be able to stop them, and they will die in the Sinai Peninsula. I think it's that simple. And then, even beyond that, like let's moving beyond genocide, which is I should have left this as the seminal topic.
Oh
Seminal is
no,
that
no,
big.
it's all miserable, We're here
Uh,
for it all,
Okay, there's more. There's more. There's the fact that this has really wide regional ramifications. This whole kerfuffle has really wide regional ramifications for Israel, and it could cause a wider war. There is Hezbollah in the north, right, which Israel has threatened multiple times. Uh, and Hezbollah was surprised by this whole attack. It seems that neither the Iranians nor Hezbollah knew that this was going to happen. But still, even if they are not directly intervening in Israel, Hezbollah may be forced to intervene later if Israel attacks them. There's already skirmishes between them and like like exchanges of some light artillery fire. And they are a serious army, by the way. They're not a joke. Hezbollah is much bigger and much stronger than Hamas is.
Yeah, it's like
Uh,
100. It's like 120,000 people, right, or something in that
it's
ballpark.
pretty big. It's the biggest non-state army in the world, as far as I'm aware. Then there's the Iranians that have started kind of a proxy war with the with the Americans in Syria. There's like they are exchanging fire between bases. American bases are getting hit by Iranian militias. The US is responding by hitting other places, and that's already pretty insane. uh ISIS is gaining from this as well. Uh, Yemen, like the Houthis are raiding ships with helicopters in the Suez, like in not in the Suez, not that far up, but like the Suez Straits are the Suez Strait is affected by this, and
Well, it's
shipping in
it's
that.
it's basically everything they want. Like much in the same way that Hamas is a great radicalization tool to negatively polarize people into supporting Netanyahu. Like, Israel going sicko mode with the killing of Palestinians, antagonizing their neighbors, all that. Pretty huge motivating influence for all of the local like jihadist groups to go like, hey, see, look at these Jews, it's one of the reasons why the claim that like Israel is the only safe space for Jews is so laughable. Not only is Israel not safe by their own admission, they propagandize over it, but it's literally like, hey, we're safe in this crock pot, as you turn the dial up. Like they're exacerbating every condition in the region that makes that area more dangerous.
Yeah, the insane flailing, zero plan, alienate the allies, like do like completely horrendous shit in Palestine, like, and basically enrage all of your neighbors at the same time. It's not the best strategy of like the Mr. Security, like Netanyahu. None of this was planned very clearly. It's going to shit. And like even like threatening to like do assassinations in Doha, like to kill Hamas leaders. Oh my god, I can't describe just how much like the Israeli security like establishment and like their leadership is just absolutely like messing
Yeah,
things up.
they're
And then
they're flailing, and like the only real capital they have there in terms of like maintaining long-term support and control of the region is how well they can convince America that it's not a total waste of time to back them. And it seems like they've also been doing a miserable job of keeping us appeased too. Like they're like, if they were smart, if this was well planned and calculated, I feel like they would have been a lot more effective in getting the Biden administration, like giving the Biden administration something at once, making sure that it's not to America's disinterest, you know?
Yeah, I think that like at this point, it's very clear that like Biden is really done with Netanyahu and he doesn't want this to continue. This is why, like, even though he personally doesn't say much, like much of his administration, but much of Biden's administration is telling, like, through other channels, hey, cool it with the war crimes. Maybe like what's your plan, like all these things, because like clearly like Biden can it's unsustainable politically, like to continue backing Israel through this, especially with all the recent plans, the invasion of southern Gaza, which by the way, the idea that they would just invade half the Gaza Strip was a joke from the beginning, because what, they were going to invade half the Gaza Strip and occupy the Gaza city, and then what? They would leave the rest of the strip under Hamas control? No, they were going to invade the rest of it. They were going to say, okay, now the bases are in Khan Yunis. Now the bases are in
because
Rafah.
they'll all flee south. There's no reason you would only invade half of it. That doesn't make any sense.
There is literally no discernible like end to this. There is no easy military solution for Israel. So eventually, like they will have to do something, and I'm really scared about how this ends.
Did you see the comments? Just, I think it was earlier today. Was it our Secretary of Defense where he said that Israel is gunning for a strategic loss in the region because they can't control or minimize the civilian casualties?
I mean, I haven't heard it, but it sounds like something the current Biden admin would like go for, because the current Biden admin is basically Biden saying, yeah, we support Israel. Yeah, let's give them an aid package, you know, like sending artillery shells to Israel that doesn't need them, like instead of Ukraine, for example, like ridiculous
which
shit.
does, yes, yeah, the idea, yeah, sending any arms to Israel when they're already that well equipped is insane, you know.
Like the rest of the administration, it like is saying like, let's cool it. Like it's very clear that the Americans are annoyed. If they really believed in this whole thing, they would be much more vocally supportive. And obviously, because there's really no easy end to what like Israel has started by invading the Gaza Strip, which it was just like a horrible decision from the beginning. Like the idea that they would go in with the goal of destroying Hamas. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Destroy Hamas how? When is mission complete when you've destroyed Hamas? Like, are you gonna come out like Bush and say mission accomplished after like 6 months? You've occupied the strip. There's like massive violence everywhere. There's massive violence in the West Bank because like ISIS is smuggling weapons, is trying at least to smuggle weapons into the West Bank. Like, you've created like the worst possible condition. Maybe you've killed 50,000 civilians. Maybe you've killed 100,000 civilians by the end of this. Maybe you've ended up pushing 2 million people into the desert to die. I don't know what you've done, but like you end up with a horrible situation where you haven't even like achieved any of the original goals, which was like, oh, destroy Hamas or safeguard the conditions for like, I don't know, like for Israeli civilians to be safe. Like, he's just like, things are just like being made worse.
Yeah, yeah, I guess, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I call this genocidal, I guess. It's just because like it really does seem like the only thing they could possibly be talking about in the back rooms in Netanyahu's cabinet is like, okay, seriously though, like, how are we going to do this? You know, like what, how are we going to get rid of all of them? It's really, really grim to think about. I mean, obviously, I hope it doesn't work out that way. Plenty of genocidal ambitions have failed because of poor planning or idiot leaders, and both seem to be the case here, at least to some extent. You know, in terms of like how to move forward for them. I don't even think the Republicans are that keen on backing Israel because they've been doing this rah anti-interventionist bullshit with Ukraine, and even before that with Trump, where they were like, yeah, Trump, Trump, anti-war Trump, all the other Democrats want war, Hillary wants war, not Trump. And then now, like, yeah, sure, they're going to vote for the virtue signal referendums and the whole, they're going to pretend to go along with it, but a lot of the Republican base is at least latently anti-Semitic. The whole George Soros
Yeah,
bit.
there's like the all globalists, like, and
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
Soros like faction that probably doesn't want like Israel. There's like, I don't know, all the crazy far right grifters are
The
doing like
anti-interventionists, the
yeah,
quote unquote isolationists, right?
like
The
fucking
anti-Semites. Nobody
aimless
wants this.
pieces of shit. Yeah.
They should have
No,
tried to
no.
convince us that Hamas was woke beforehand or something.
But they did do like a little propaganda skit that had like liberal college students saying, "Oh, I support the Palestinians," and
Oh
then
yeah,
like,
yeah, I saw that.
yeah,
Was
like
that state media or was that like a big popular like TV group or
I
whatever?
I don't know. I don't remember. I think, but the Israel Twitter page posted it, so I don't think it matters that
Okay,
much.
got yeah, that's true.
Like the Israel, like the Israel Twitter page is honestly a gem. Like the things they post, like they posted like a map of like like between like the Jordan River and the sea. It was like all like Israel. They've posted so many like interesting things. Uh,
Oh, the like
like the
the Pallywood stuff where
Hollywood stuff. Oh
yeah,
my
where they're like,
god.
actually,
Oh my
all these
god.
dead babies are made of plastic, and this one
Yeah.
guy who looks
Christ
kind of like this other
Peppers.
guy, this is literally like Alex Jones shit.
And I don't know, like the thing is that like I don't know who they're trying to convince with that, because like the obviously like like US liberals aren't gonna like this, like even like ostensibly pro-Israel like American liberals aren't gonna like this, and this is why I think that a lot of the discussion has like veered off into like, I don't know, discussions about the peace process, right? Like the history of the peace process. Where did Palestinians make mistakes? Where did Israelis make mistakes? And like people try to rehash the whole history, and I think it is really important, right? Like I think that like I would personally recommend you to like do like either a research stream or like get somebody on to talk about like the whole peace process, because I mean even I've engaged with it like quite a bit, and I don't think that like I have everything like down to the point,
Yeah, it's
but even
oh no, sorry, please continue.
yeah, no, but basically what I'm saying is that like all of this right now, all of the how we got here does it like the all the peace process does matter, but it's important to really focus on what's going on right now day to day, and it's really important to like grasp just how dangerous the situation is. Obviously I can't know if Netanyahu is in back rooms like slamming his fist on a table saying, if I could kill him, if I could kill him, if I could kill him. Maybe he is. Maybe he's like, oh, I don't know, I want to destroy Hamas, I want to be the victor, I want to be like return to Israel triumphant with Biden in like my lap or something. I don't know what he wants. I have no idea. But we need to recognize here that some of the like outcomes of this are really like really bleak, and there is there is seemingly no plan to like in the long term for something that does need a long term plan. The civilians in Gaza are not just suffering the indiscriminate bombardment, they are suffering from a lack of just about everything. There used to be 500 trucks a day going into Gaza to keep it alive, and right now there's nowhere near that. The people there are going to be dying from exposure. The water situation is horrible. Hospitals, forget about it. Electricity, none. Incubators, nothing. Like the it is so cataclysmic in Gaza at the moment, and going hashing over like whether or not Yasser Arafat should have accepted like the deal given to him in like Camp David. Like I frankly do not care at the moment.
Yeah,
Not that much.
diversion towards that is largely like a misdirection. I feel there's no set of historical circumstances that justify the current present situation. It's historically interesting and worthwhile to learn about purely to deflect other lies. But yeah, I agree. In terms of the immediate conflict, it's shockingly unimportant when it comes to the morality of what's going on.
I would say the main thing about like the history of the peace process that is genuinely like interesting to talk about in regards to the current conflict is how much the rise of Hamas was a consequence of the failure of the peace process, the unilateral pull out of Gaza by Ariel Sharon. That ended up making the Palestinian Authority seem completely toothless, and then like Hamas gaining massively in popularity, saying that, oh, look how little violence could get us what like decades of the peace process couldn't.
And
It is
it's worth noting too that Hamas initially branded themselves as less militant than they would end up being. That they were like they initially a lot of it was like the incompetence of the people they were replacing, and like, you know, oh, we know we can lead, and then as it went on, it got more sort of overtly jihadist, right?
So yeah, in the beginning they were a charity, and then like they became pretty quickly they became like the radical wing of like any Palestinian liberation effort, and of course like they were parts of like terror groups, but they weren't that popular while the peace process was going on. While Israel was engaging to some extent, trying to find some kind of peace, like the they were massively unpopular. Like with the death of the peace process came the rise of Hamas. So you have to consider, okay, what conditions can we build here that to prevent if Hamas is like ostensibly really weakened by this conflict, how do we like create the conditions to reduce like the possibility of another Hamas rising? And I will tell you, it's not by raising Gaza. That's not the way to do that.
Unless you kill all of them, I guess, which is like, again, my worry.
Well,
Like the only way this logic really tracks is if you eliminate the group from which an insurgency could even form, you know?
yeah, I don't think they're that smart. Like making that like I guess that calculus definitely has been made by some like in much more like I don't know knuckle dragging manners, like I hate them, I want to kill them. The I think that like it has been a historical thing of like ethnic cleansings and exchanges of populations ending like historic strife in the most like brutal and inhumane way possible. Uh, so I wouldn't exclude it as a possibility here. But I would say that if we care about not only just like the security and health of like Israeli civilians, right? But also like the Palestinian people and everybody else involved who isn't like the ghoulish leadership. Uh, I think that personally, I think that that Israel needs to take a few steps of good faith. As weird as that sounds, it's you have to start like letting off some steam, loosening restrictions, at least in the West Bank, where like the chances of like militancy are much lower, right? Ending like the expansion of the settlements, doing all these things. But it seems that Israel is like not interested in any of that at the moment. The brains are not switched on, and it's just kind of blind. Okay, let's just like keep pushing in, hoping that like somehow this will like solve itself, or like the Americans will provide some like silver bullet solution. And personally, I think that it's just not gonna work out for Netanyahu and the Israelis. I'm a bit optimistic. I don't think that they're gonna manage to push people like into the Sinai and like absolutely like end this thing in genocide. I don't think that's going to happen. Personally, I think that they're going to reach a point where they realize that they have to take that step, and the Americans are going to draw a line. Or they will reach that step, realize that, okay, here, there's clearly no solution here. Let's not do like a complete, let's not completely like make ourselves a pariah state. because losing support from the West, even if Israel is really powerful militarily, even if they have nukes, they're not as powerful as the combination of their neighbors. And completely killing
That
the
is true.
Palestinians long term is not a solution for their security whatsoever. So I think that like even the dumbest Israeli politician can recognize that, bar the far, far right. So I think that eventually this is gonna end in some kind of political disaster for Netanyahu. I think that Netanyahu is cooked no matter what after this. By the way, I don't think there's any reality in which he gets away with this. And I think that like eventually a plan will have to form. It's gonna be crap, and the Americans are gonna have to say something about it. I mean,
I
we'll
guess
be
it.
forced.
Oh no, please.
No, I'm saying that they will be forced into a plan by the circumstances in the ground. First of all, how bloody this will continue to get, because civilians are going to keep dying in like even higher rates. Like they're going to be forced into the circumstances of having to like somehow formulate some long-term plan, because the Americans are going to be putting pressure on this. European leaders are already like telling Israel, hey, like what the fuck are you doing? Like even Macron is is telling like he's telling the Israelis to cool it with the murder of like Palestinians, right?
I guess
So
I have such a
yeah.
difficult time imagining the Biden administration, Biden specifically, pivoting on this. You know, like because he's sacrificed so much political capital to being silent and you know, or openly abetting the genocide. And at some point, like, because the Biden administration had to know this was happening. They're not stupid. They know Netanyahu is a lunatic. This is not like some crazy lefty position. They knew this. They knew he was a threat. And they went along with it anyway, with basically no caveats. They bragged about offering no caveats. And after all of that, now they're going to have to go, oh, yeah, okay, I guess actually we are going to put limits. He literally said, like, no limits. And now he's going to have to walk back on that. You know, I wonder if the Biden administration is going to continue to sacrifice the political capital of being associated with Netanyahu and just never call him on it. Never really call him on it. I mean, I know that individual officials have done, you know, have spoken to some extent, but I mean like a proper full-on denunciation.
Okay, personally, I think that that Biden can say I have no limits as long as he likes, but he has limits. The Americans have limits. They have limits because they can't be seen abetting a genocide, right? They, in their view, they're seeing like, okay, Israel is engaging in like a military operation to get rid of Hamas, and they're being ham-fisted. This is like kind of what the Americans are trying to like convey to the American people, like the American administration, and to the rest of the world, that they're not being as careful as we'd like them to be. They're being ham-fisted. If Israel like starts racking up like the civilian deaths, like 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, eventually the Americans are going to have to like pump the brakes on their support for this whole thing. And here's the thing, right? Netanyahu, if he caves to the Americans, will be seen as weak. So I think personally that the Americans are going to present a few ultimatums of some kind, but not like real, like I'm saying, like a few conditions, like a few outlines of what they want, and Israel is just going to continuously break them. Netanyahu is just going to ignore them, is going to say, okay, what, the Americans are going to support me, I don't care, or threaten to like side with China, which is a joke in my opinion. Like there's no replacement for the United States in his neighborhood. So like China is not even close.
Yeah, like
So that would be like the last resort.
Assad has like full Russian backing, and all that's bought him is like a tiny besieged portion of what used to be his country. You know, there's no replacing American support for regional hegemony.
Yeah, and also like the amount of credibility gives on the world stage, like the also the support of the European Union, like the largest, probably, I'm pretty sure the largest trading partner of Israel is like the European Union. And if America denounces like Israeli action, there's no there's no way the EU like won't just go along with it, because the EU, I think, is far more divided on the issue. Is far more like there's the European left is, even in its weakened state, much more like anti-Israel than the American like liberals. I want to say that that yeah, I think eventually Biden, because he isn't dumb, he knows that like Netanyahu has no plan, and obviously in the beginning he's gonna reflexively claim support for Israel. There is some like institutional inertia there as well, obviously.
Oh yeah,
But
to be
since
sure,
he's
we've been doing this for a while.
putting the administration in this position where they constantly like make critiques of Israel sly and even less sly as time goes on. Eventually he will come out and say, hey, you can't like push everyone into Rafah. You can't push everyone around, like create a Hunger Game situation when they have to run around like from neighborhood to neighborhood to survive your bombings. And Israel is gonna like Netanyahu either backs down then or ignores that, and the Americans cut it off. Because like Biden can very easily say, we've been reasonable, we supported Israel, we like gave them weapons, we like endorsed their action against Hamas, but they cannot like commit like war crimes, for example. Like we stand for like the international like rules-based order, and Israel can't be part of that order if they are like massacring people at such a scale. And even though things have been horrific, they can get so much worse, guys. Like it's not even you can't even conceive how much worse things can get. And that's the issue. And I think that like like you don't even have to like convince, because the biggest issue here is like pushing liberals on this, right?
Yeah.
Because
And there has been movement there. There has been movement there for sure.
American liberals right now are not comfortable with endorsing Netanyahu. They're not comfortable with, but obviously they'll be like, oh yeah, but like Hamas is a terrorist organization, and they are. They're gonna say like there are so many things that you don't really have to fight the liberals on. If the liberals say like Hamas is a terrorist organization that like raped women and killed babies, okay, yeah, that's obviously something that happened. So you don't really have to fight the Democrats and like the liberals on that. But what you, in my opinion, right? Because I'm obviously like I up to a point I can give recommendations there. You have to take some concrete steps and say, okay, listen, there are serious war crimes here. But you can literally show people the Wikipedia page for like what is considered discriminate and indiscriminate bombardment. You can literally show them, listen, distinction, proportionality, like military value. Those things, liberals are supposed to care about rules and international law. And if they care about rules and international law, that's something you can leverage in conversation against them, because Israel is disregarding international law at an alarming scale. You don't even have to like argue genocide, because that's a difficult argument to make. I can like personally in a conversation with a liberal that is like not gonna accept the idea of genocide. Even I could like start like I don't know, like arguing about genocide, historical genocides, what we consider is ethnic cleansing genocide, is cultural destruction genocide. I could make that argument all day, but I'm not gonna like sit there and make it. What I'm gonna do personally is I'm gonna sit there and explain, listen, there is currently a wild disregard for civilian life. There is clear violations of international law taking place, and the United States cannot be condoning that. If we care, supposedly, about an international rules-based order based on liberal arguments, that is, if we care about this, if we care about liberal internationalism, we cannot support Israeli action here. We cannot support the like occupation and like obvious like dead end goal that Israel has there. We cannot support a reoccupation of the Gaza Strip, and the obviously like they're not going to solve the Hamas issue. That's another thing you can very easily argue. There has to be some action and some pressure on the side of the United States, some real action, some real pressure, because all those people that say, oh yeah, Israel's going to pivot to China. Yeah, bro, any day they're going to join BRICS. Like, off. Like, clearly the United States has leverage here. People say, oh, Biden is doing all he can. No, he isn't. Biden has way more power here. Even if he can't single-handedly say, okay, Israel, like, it's over, like, you're done. Like, obviously, like, up to a certain extent, like, Israel is going to ignore him. But, like, Biden and liberals can play that to their advantage to distance themselves. Israel doesn't like the Americans don't have the silver bullet, but they can apply so much more pressure than they are right now. That is something that I will not go back on. They are not they're not omnipowerful, because that when you make that argument to liberals, they say, "Oh man, you're like an American exceptionalist or whatever." They're not omnipowerful, sure, but they have a lot of power, and I don't think you'll struggle to convince a liberal that like the U.S. is a better friend to Israel than China. So I think personally that this is how you should go about arguing to liberals that, hey, this is a really fucked up situation. Don't go into really deep philosophical arguments. Don't go try to rehashing history. Just talk facts, because they're there. It's in my opinion, crystal clear, like just how egregious the violations of international law that are taking place are.
Yeah,
that's my speech.
No, I don't disagree at all, and I agree with, you should tailor your arguments to the people that you're speaking to. There are times when you can argue the genocidal thing, and you can argue, I guess, like this sort of like broader implications, and then there are times when you're talking to a liberal, and it's probably best to just like explain how this is breaking the classroom rules.
Yeah.
The group that I've seen, I guess, get the most aggressive and loud lately, and maybe has sort of the most I wouldn't say it's correct, but I would say the most irritating point to deal with are the people who basically say, like, well, what else is Israel supposed to do? Like, they defer to the idea that, oh, well, all these peace processes failed before, so there's no other way. Actually, what do you expect them to do? Like, just deal with rocket attacks forever? Which is a bullshit argument, and I think it's dishonest, too. I think the people who say that are fully aware of the fact that there could have been better outcomes, and that Israel has been the cause of many of those bad outcomes, and the reason they're bringing it up is because they're acting in bad faith and they want to pretend this is some kind of inevitability. But those are the people with whom you unfortunately have to have like all the historical knowledge and stuff about like the 60 trillion different attempts there have been to bring about peace, because then you have to like engage with all their stupid bullshit.
All right. I think that in such conversations, there are two things we have to ask is, okay, are we talking in the context of what is Israel supposed to do after the October 7th attacks? Or are we talking in like broadly in the previous status quo, what was Israel supposed to do? Like, oh, what was Israel supposed to do? Just like, I don't know, like deal with the rocket fire? And in the context of like the broad status quo, what you can very easily argue is that the conditions that the Palestinians are being put under are ones that can create the conditions for terrorism to emerge. If like you can say that the terrorism is bad, obviously, like the murder of civilians is terrible.
Heard rumors of this, yeah.
Yeah, but like Israel is clearly not doing its best to like improve its security situation. If you really care about the security situation of Israel, you can clearly understand why like apartheid in the West Bank and like the blockade in Gaza was something that was undermining Israeli security. Like I can't. So here's a question for such people. It is this: when you are like psychopathically like controlling like water flow or fuel or food into the Gaza Strip, when you treat the Palestinian kids like crap, when you do administrative detentions with no charges on people, when you have like 20-year prison sentences for stone throwing, do you think that the possible reduction of threat from, say, charging a kid with 20 years without trial, without access to a lawyer, do you think that like the reduction in like the threat of that stone being thrown in that one instance like increases or decreases your security long term? Because I don't think you can make that argument. I think that long term, you know very well that you're just continuously radicalizing new generations of people, more and more young people who are growing up in a system that is just so catastrophically fucked. If you want to improve the security of Israeli civilians, if Israel cares about the security of Israeli civilians, they will start by improving the conditions of Palestinians, because you can improve the conditions that Palestinians live under massively without compromising almost anything in terms of security. there are so many rules that are there just to fuck with them.
Yeah,
If-
yeah.
if-
It's to the point where anybody arguing that Israel is actually trying to act as a good steward of peace, I just generally assume is acting in bad faith. I have no idea how a person could actually believe that, you know?
I think that there are people who are horrendously misinformed. But personally, the strongest argument you can make to these people is by saying that there are so many policies that are clearly just like aggravating the Palestinians for no reason, that have no impact on security. So you can definitely start like doing away with those and trying to revive some sort of peace process, because we know historically that during the peace process, while that was going on, like things were like easier. There wasn't any Hamas. And then like somebody who's clearly bad faith is going to say, oh, well, they're intifadas, blah, 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 blah. And then, or the Arab-Israeli wars. And then you can ignore like a person like that. Like if we're not talking about like talking to a propagandist here, we're talking about somebody like who may be like misinformed. And knowing the history is really important in when you're talking to like a propagandist or whatever, or like somebody who is clearly has an agenda. And then if we're asking about, okay, like after October 7th, what is Israel supposed to do? And there the question is, especially to like a liberal, is like, okay, after 9/11, what was America supposed to do? Well, America was supposed to act.
I've seen people say that. I've literally seen people be like, well, you wouldn't expect America to not respond after 9/11, which is like everyone, even Republicans now say that the war was a mistake.
Oh yeah, and what I loved about this was I saw somebody saying, "Oh, America would be hypocritical if it cautioned Israel based on how it responded after 9/11." It's like, dude, America is in the best position to go ahead and say, "Listen, we had this reaction after 9/11, and it is not advisable. It does not create good outcomes for the security for long-term security."
We have been there, you know.
Yeah, we've been there. We've done that, and that's not the way to do it. Like, if your reaction to the terrorist attack is being massively racist, invading like a bunch of countries and like killing hundreds of thousands of civilians, completely like ruining like any goodwill you have with any nations in the whole region, that's obviously and that goes basically for both the Americans and the Israelis, because the response to 9/11 and the response to this is actually quite similar. In my opinion, of course, there's the differences. There's of course, like different sizes, powers, right? Because Israel is much smaller and is in much more threatened position than is the United States. The United States can get away with like 9/11 way easier than Israel can. So long term, you can say that, okay, if you're asking what was Israel supposed to do, first of all, not massacre civilians at such a scale. Obviously not engage in indiscriminate fire, as we've clearly seen them do. And the reaction is, okay, you want to do that? Let's say they secure the border first. Let's say they evacuate people. Let's say they assess the damage, and then they engage in talks, I don't know, with the international community about what is supposed to be done about Hamas or the hostages. Let's say don't start carpet bombing Gaza and razing the buildings that your hostages are probably going to be inside, you know? Like, I don't know. You can do so many things other than what Israel has done. And maybe I'm not an expert, maybe I don't have the perfect solution, but I know that what Israel has done is incorrect. See, that's the thing. Like, I don't have to be like extremely on point. I don't have to have like a perfect peace plan here. I know what they've done is genuinely terrible. Like, any plan, like barring an ideal plan, almost any plan would have been better than what the response has been so far. So that is, in my opinion, like the two different scales of discussion regarding what was Israel supposed to do. Like, yeah, it wasn't supposed to like murder civilians on a massive scale. That's what Israel wasn't supposed to do. Maybe they were supposed to, I don't know, like loosen the screws a little bit. Maybe let off some steam. Maybe like engage with the Palestinians in some other way. Maybe release political prisoners. Maybe do exchanges and find some like semblance of like peace and reconciliation for the people who were harmed by this, like not like the civilians who were killed in this like terrorist attack, right?
They have
'Cause-
always been the biggest assholes, is the thing. Like with what's been going on in the West Bank, especially, because there's a lot more nuance to what goes on in the Gaza Strip, I feel, than what goes on in the West Bank. Because the West Bank is just full on an apartheid state where like regularly people will be murdered or kicked out of their homes because they're not Israeli, and that's it. And like I saw someone post this, and I think it's extremely true. That one of the reasons Israel focuses so much on Hamas and the Gaza Strip is because they know that the West Bank situation is completely indefensible. Like there's no pretext, there's nothing they could say that would make any of that look acceptable. So they just try to keep people from looking at it, basically, and that shit antagonizes everyone.
That was basically what I was gonna say. You preempted me there. Honestly, I completely agree with that point. I think that if anybody digs into what's happening in the West Bank, like it is just so completely indefensible because these people don't really even pose a threat to Israel, right? Like they're defenseless, and Israel is occupying them, and Israel is treating them like they're not humans. Like it is the level of like the amount of policies, how institutionalized this apartheid is incredible, and that's why I think Israel doesn't defend this on an international like on the international stage. What they do defend is their treatment of Gaza. Even though that is indefensible, you can really easily sell arguments about I don't know, like Hamas using human shields. Okay, sure, Hamas being a terrorist organization, we have to destroy it. You can make those arguments. The thing is that like when you the broader you go with your view of this, the less like they make sense. And even when you're talking about those things, like I don't know, human shields, you when a bank robber has like hostages, right? You're not supposed to mow down all the hostages.
Yeah, that's the most. I couldn't believe this because, like, I always thought the reason human shields were like, you know, a dickish thing to do was because the way you treated human shields was you didn't kill them. But the question with Israel seems to be like, you know, oh, they're using human shields. That sucks. And then they just do the same thing anyway. You know, like there's the I thought the reason you're not supposed to do them is because they were a deterrent. I didn't think the solution to them morally was to just not be deterred.
Yeah, so here's the thing with the whole human shields, right? It's like, okay, but Hamas, even if it's using human shields, all it can really do is lob some like crappy rockets at you. Why don't you, I don't know, use your incredible air defense network to deal with those, and then go do a slow infantry-based ground like assault that deals the minimal amount of civilian casualties, not like drop like 90% of the bombs they drop were like 1,000 and 2,000 pound bombs. Like those are like clearly not weapons of like discriminate weapons. Like people are memeing about the sword rocket that the Americans have, but the reasons the Americans have like a sword rocket, right, is because they want to be killing as few civilians as possible in their strikes. When like, can you imagine, instead of throwing a sword rocket on a car, they were dropping a 2,000 bomb on like 2,000 pound bomb on a neighborhood and flattening 3 buildings, like like to kill one guy? You can't do that. Like the argument like of like people are using human shields can get you only that far. And here I like to use a very funny comparison. Have you heard of the Beslan school siege?
I have not.
So, in during the Chechen wars,
wait. This was when the Russian special forces demonstrated their contempt for human life, right?
Yeah. So
okay,
it was
yes.
that case where basically the Chechen terrorists took over a school. There are many cases where the Russians acted completely psychopathically in a hostage situation, right? But they took over a school, and the Chechen terrorists took over a school, and the Russian army like positioned themselves around the school, and there was some kind of like up or gunfire from one side. I don't remember exactly what happened, but the way the Russian army responded was by firing tank rounds into the building, using flamethrowers, using automatic cannon fire from armor personnel carriers, just absolutely flattening everything, like killing like indiscriminately. Eventually they ended up like killing, like, I don't know, like a third of the hostages, and like had people like running away like lynch mob. Like, this is not how a professional military like acts in a hostage situation. And if we consider the Palestinian civilians, to be innocent in this, then we obviously understand that indiscriminate bombardment can't be justified just on the basis of military targets. So I like to use the example of the Beslan school siege, because then we'd have people on one side saying that, like, let's say the terrorists that are doing this, like, in the name of Chechen liberation, are in the right, which they aren't. And on the other side, we'd have people saying that the Russian government, like, completely flattening the school with 1,500 people in it, and like with heavy arms fire, were on the right because there were terrorists inside. So, in my opinion, you guys should be centrists in this and say that the terrorists aren't cool, but also you're not supposed to kill all the civilians to get the terrorists. That's not how things work.
Yeah, not to mention, Russian special forces probably killed a greater proportion of terrorists to civilians than Israel is now. Like, even if you go by the 5,000 Hamas dead, which is bullshit, obviously, it's probably closer to like 500. And even that, I feel, honestly, like, I'm pretty sure Hamas just fled south the moment they could. They don't want to get bombed. They knew that there would be a ground invasion in the north, so they picked up, they ran south. And if there's going to be any real, like, block by block fight to conquer the Gaza Strip, they'll be doing it there. Why would they stay in the north?
I don't know how much time you have, but I can briefly tell you kind of what's happening in those terms. There are
Please.
There are Palestinian militias, so other like armed groups that were fighting the Israeli military, the IDF, in the outskirts of Gaza, using rocket fire and like some ATGMs that they have laying around, and some rifles and snipers and stuff like that. But I believe that the Hamas kept its best units in like the most densely populated areas of Gaza City, and the most densely built up areas of Gaza City. If you see right now how the military has like surrounded Gaza City, they have taken a lot of like the suburbs, rural like places, and they have taken the coast that can be protected by naval fire. But they haven't been able to break into like the most densely populated areas, and that's because
it's really difficult to invade dense cities.
Yeah, and because some of the best trained fighters that Hamas has are in there, and it doesn't matter if they have like cut off Gaza or not on the like ground level. There are tunnels. So Hamas can, if they find themselves too strangled in there, they can flee through their tunnels, disperse in their ruins amongst the civilians that are still there are still civilians in Gaza City, and some of them, of course, can use the tunnels to just flee south under the the blockade of the IDF. And then they'll have to do that repeated in Khan Yunis, and they'll have to repeat that in Rafah. And there's almost no infrastructure left to support the life of the civilians in there. And it's clearly not an operation going smoothly for the Israelis. They're like,
how many casualties have they taken? Do we know?
Close, like casualties, I couldn't tell you exactly. They've had like maybe 100 killed in the ground operation. Something like that. Maybe it's a bit less. Maybe it's like 80. But that doesn't matter. The thing is that like they haven't even gotten to the hard part yet, quote unquote. They aren't fighting like on the ground in Jabalia. They aren't in like right in the center of Gaza. So their casualties will also mount, in my opinion. Of course, it might go relatively well for them, but that's if they don't want to be exhaustive in like destroying Hamas, which even if they tried, like they really can't. As I've said before, there won't be a point where they can say definitively that there are no Hamas fighters years, there will still be a Hamas insurgency, no matter how the ground operation goes. But yeah, obviously, even if they conquered all of the northern strip, there would be Hamas fighters in the south of the strip. Invading the north and telling civilians to flee south was only a temporary thing. Telling them now to flee across different zones or parts of the south as they bomb one part and then telling them to flee back to that part after they've bombed it, they are reducing, as time goes on, the capacity of the Gaza Strip to sustain civilian life. And they must be aware of that, which really will force a reckoning as to what will be happening, what is going to happen, and it will also force a reckoning with the United States. I hope. I hope
Yeah,
the Americans
ideally. I
are
mean,
gonna do something eventually.
it's I
Like
think
it can only get so bad.
it's about 16,000 dead now, I think. I mean, more or less.
Yeah.
But there's about 1.7 million people who are living out of their homes now. Most of them are just living in these gigantic, I imagine, extremely densely populated refugee camps in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, which means that, like, not only do they have nowhere to go and the supplies are dwindling and it's almost logistically impossible to manage people getting food and water and hygiene in that amount of time in that space with that many people, but also if the IDF does move south, which Netanyahu has said he wants to, that's, it seems to be on the docket, there won't be any place for them to flee. And, we're going to see like videos and pictures, probably ones that Israel will try to keep quiet, but we're going to see them anyway, of like swarms of humans basically pressed, like a crush basically, where there's a refugee camp and there's Egypt and there's the IDF, and like if I agree with you that there does eventually have to be a line, because the U.S. only supports Israel in large part because regional hegemony, Iran, nuclear weapons, blah blah. Like this isn't existential. Hell, there were Americans who were talking about like leaving Europe to their own devices when Hitler was invading France. Like we're not that committed to our allies against everything, and Israel is not our greatest ally, not even close. So I don't know. Like, I guess I hope there's a point where it stops. That'd be pretty cool, I feel.
Personally, I think that there is a line up to which the Americans may be willing to support Israel, after which they won't be able to support Israel. I mean, right now, civilians that fled from the north, not all of them, of course, not all of them could flee, not all of them like were gonna flee, because you need to keep in mind that like if you're a civilian like getting bombed, getting out on the street and trying to move is not necessarily something that you may be willing to do. You may be scared. You may be like immobile. You may be disabled. You may have your own shelter and hoping to live this out. You may have accepted death. There's so many things. Civilians don't just move on a dime like that. People don't leave their homes behind just like that. And all those people that fled from there are crowded in hospitals and in UN schools, hoping that like they will be spared from Israeli airstrikes. It is a humanitarian catastrophe, and eventually, like the trend is right now for things to get worse, because there's clearly no no plan in place to deal with these people.
Do you
Yeah,
do you
go ahead.
agree? Do you agree with my assessment that the main wedge, the main reason we put up with Israel and all their bullshit, and the reason we're sort of in on this the way that we are, is because we're worried about Iran? That Iran is basically inevitably going to get a nuclear weapon, and our only hope to prevent this from happening is the idea that we can just rely on Mossad to keep assassinating their physicists, or bombing or sabotaging their, enrichment facilities or whatever else they need to do?
I don't know. I think a big part of it is like inertia. Part of it is like in American institutions like having supported Israel for this long. Part of it has to be popular support for Israel's right to exist as an idea or whatever. There is when it comes to Iran, yeah, obviously the U.S. Like foreign policy establishment wants Israel there as a counterweight to Iran, considering that Iraq is very, very friendly right now to Iran, at least parts of it. like Syria is a mess. Obviously, there isn't a friend as stable and as good to the U.S. in the Middle East right now, apart from Israel. And obviously, part of it has to be being Iran, like being a counterweight to Iran. Now, as to them, like I don't know, assassinating physicists or slowing down the Iranian nuclear like progress, I think that really can't work out long term.
I
Eventually, if the
agree.
Iranians want, they will get a nuclear weapon. So in terms of that, I think that the Americans are actually not happy at the idea that like Israel might start something with Iran that might have to drag the US in
Yeah,
it.
we're fucked
Of
now.
course.
We're fucked. We had the accords with them, and that gave
Oh
us some
God,
hope.
yeah.
Then Trump killed those, and now with Israel, like I feel like we're double fucked now. You know?
Yeah, honestly, I think that that something that Biden should have to consider before like staking his reputation on the outcome of like Israel like coming out on like scot free out of this. Before Biden stakes his reputation on that, he should consider what would happen to not only the position of the U.S. in like the Middle East, but also in the Ukraine and anywhere else. What would happen to the American position if, I don't know, Trump won in 2024,
Oh, I'm
right?
sure we get much better so
Oh yeah,
quickly.
obviously, yeah. Things are gonna get so much better if Trump won, guys. Definitely wouldn't be like apocalyptic. Not only for American democracy, but also for American foreign policy, and possibly democracies all around the world may face like a relentless assault. Let's forget about that. Let's have Biden be kind of reluctant about this and not having the strongest of words to say. You know what? I think that like right now Israel is as unpopular as it gets in the American like public sphere, and that's after they've like gotten like struck by a terrorist attack. You know, you'd expect things to be like more
Yeah,
sympathetic towards.
they could have leveraged this so well forever. Like this would have been like a half century of basically like free oppression of the Palestinians off the
But
back
no,
of this.
no, they couldn't resist like retaliating in the most like ham-fisted way possible and being like incredibly racist, doing like Pallywood stuff, which does not look good to any American. You put that in front of Americans and they just think, oh my God, they're just doing blackface, you know? Like doing like any, like the information war has been so completely fucked from day one for Israel. Like even the Hamasis or whatever, like none of this works. None of this works for them. So honestly, like I think that like Biden has a lot of space here, a ton of space actually, to not only like put pressure on Israel, but also disengage in a way that is favorable to him. I think that like Biden has like real like a real possibility here to disengage and drag with him like the American establishment and drag with him the American public, which will probably like to see some chutzpah from like Biden. They would
Even
like to see some energy, you know, some like hey, what the you know, some humanity. God.
yeah, I feel like it's so difficult because like things are so polarized in the region, and the like the sensible strategy, if we could do it, if there was the political capital to do it, would obviously be to like go directly to Iran and go, okay, what like regional concessions that are reasonable could we do that would, you know, allow us to work together here and not have you just be like a perpetual sponsor of terror in the region. Like we because like Israel is and never will be the regional hegemon, right? Because frankly, because it's a Jewish state, you know, it is just almost impossible for them to be the like center of that area. Maybe things could change in the future, and you know, I love it when bigotry changes, but that's the case right now. Iran is it, or maybe the Saudis and whatever. But we can't do that because if Biden reached out to Iran after October 7th, everyone would be like, "Oh wow, traitorous Biden." You know, Beijing Biden going over to work with Hitler terrorist ISIS Hamas after 10 million Israelis were killed or whatever. It would be like it's a non-starter.
Yeah. No, right now any conversation with Iran, in my opinion, is a non-starter. Apart from, let's say, like other channels, or like which obviously to some extent may be taking place. I think that, yeah, long term, after some of this calms down, which I really don't know or see when that could happen, re-engaging or trying to re-engage in the nuclear deal would be beneficial. And you know what could help with re-engaging in the nuclear deal? I don't know, taking a stance that supports the life of Palestinians. Even the barest, like, you can't understand, even the barest acknowledgement, not only of their suffering, but also like of all the of like Israeli war crimes, that could do a massive, like, you don't even have to drop support for Israel, right? You don't have to drop support for their existence or statehood.
Yeah,
All
just
you really
just
have
just
to do,
indicate like, hey, look at these guys. Just literally anything to
yeah,
signal.
like buying like goodwill is something that has to happen eventually. Like, and you're not going to do it just by like only supporting Israel here. Like, you have to do something. And I think that long term Iran is going to obviously be a problem for the US, considering like just the mountain of ups that have led to this situation. Like, uh and I don't know, I don't see, like, right now the only space for optimism, in my opinion, is that I don't think that like a genocide will actually happen. I think that it's a possible but unlikely scenario. But the rest of my pessimism is I don't see a way out for like Netanyahu and for like the current military situation. I don't see a way out for like the Americans, at least not an easy one. I I think that like this whole situation is, and you know the meme with the trolley, you
Yeah.
know, you can only watch.
Yes. I
But you can't
yeah.
only watch. I want to stress this, guys. You cannot, the support for Palestinians that has been shown in European states and in the US, like the biggest Palestinian protests ever. These will continue, and I suggest you join some of them. I've been to a few myself. I didn't scream in favor of Hamas. I was just there, like, vibing with friends, and that's something you guys can do.
Yeah,
Please,
this is the largest
please.
public outpouring of support for Palestinian people basically ever.
Yeah.
So the support is meaningful. I know like the Democrats are feeling the pressure with this already
Mhm.
being potentially a very difficult election. And then you have the fact that younger people are like losing their shit over what Biden is doing and what he's supporting and what he's saying. So, the pressure is definitely there. The protests have been more persistent than I think anybody expected them to be. I guess I was kind of expecting them to like peter off really quickly, but this is still the subject of international attention even after 2 months, which is really rare. Even the war in Ukraine, it's difficult to maintain support over a long period of time.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? And the reaction from a lot of like American liberals, all this is like, oh, you ungrateful fucks. Like, you don't understand. Like, Biden's doing everything you can. It's like, okay, okay, Mr. American liberal, perhaps, but uh, Mr. Richard Hannay,
Hmm.
if I'm an American, right? I will
You are
vote
in
for
my
Biden.
heart.
Right? Yeah, of course. I will vote for Biden, but that's the thing. I am not your average voter. If your average voter like is absolutely losing their shit, you're not gonna convince them to like vote for Biden by telling him that he's an ungrateful fuck. How you're gonna convince them is, well, by getting the people with the power, I don't know, like Biden and his administration, to move forward with this. And this is not a matter of like, forget the Twitter discourse online, forget like me or you or anybody else who'd be voting for Biden, because I guess, yeah, we would vote for Biden, obviously, because like Trump is like a nightmare end state scenario. However, it is on Biden to try and win over the people he's losing with this situation, and there's no easy way to do that if he's just like being like unclear on what's supposed to happen here, with like not taking any like strong like position. Clinton, I think, would have done better on this. Like, it's not even, it's a joke. I
Yeah,
think that, like, he could do stuff. Like, he's not that weak.
it is pretty insane to like the fact that Israel exists because America wills it is not like a secret. This is not like some top secret IR like politics circle, bit of key info. Everyone understands this. Certainly Israel does. And as a consequence of that, for Biden to say like, yeah, don't invade the south part of the Gaza Strip. That'd be a really bad idea. And then the next day, Netanyahu to be like, yeah, we're gonna invade the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Let's go, boys. Um, you know, again, I don't want to be accused, I guess, of sort of furthering this under the with the will of perpetuating American hegemonic power, more along the lines of like everyone knows the game here, right? Like for the game to be what it is and for Netanyahu to still defy our will is insane. And it does make Biden look incredibly weak. And if ever there is a time for America to be strong, it is when preventing genocide. I mean, I support NATO's involvement in Yugoslavia, to stop the deceitful Serb in their in their in their effort. I'm not principally opposed to America flexing.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Even if America isn't like able to push the end this button, America like the Israeli policy, like an Israeli survival, is contingent to an extent, a great extent, on like American support. If they can't like like make enemies of all their neighbors and become a pariah state and hope that China will save them. China won't save them. China like will very clearly see where like the money is with this and say, "Oh, maybe I'll trade with the billion people around you and not you." Like it's not it's very simple in my opinion that Israel needs American support. Perhaps like yeah, they have it is a country that has tried very hard to be like autonomous and autocrat like have autarky, like and be able to like to a certain extent defy like America, like but even still, they really like have built their whole security apparatus, foreign policy, their whole
We
like their whole
restock their Iron Dome missiles. Like they get so much from us.
it is the thing is like so much of like Israeli foreign and domestic policy is built around US support. It's not such an easy thing to just switch it around. So it is America can flex its muscles here, and to like the liberals saying that, oh, you're being ungrateful with this, it's like I'm sorry, like, but I think that America is a powerful country with a lot of sway in Israel in particular, and they could be doing more to end the blatant war crimes that are taking place, which you must agree with, otherwise you're a war crime denier. Like, if anybody disagrees with me that war crimes are taking place, all I have to do is show them a tank firing at a car. That like it was one of the things that I reposted early during
Yeah,
the
yeah.
invasion. And like I was furious. I was seeing people, oh, like it was like an improvised explosive device in a car, and it was like gonna ram the Israeli. Oh, fuck off! Like, who are you fooling here?
Yeah, they're
Like,
gonna ram the tank with their little shitty car. Yeah.
they're gonna ram the tank, and obviously by getting ready to ram the tank, they do a 3-point turn to turn around and go the other way. Because that's how what you do when you're a vehicle-borne IED. That's what you do. Like you see your target, and then you turn around to like get away. It is crystal clear. It is on video. It is like even if we listened and agreed with most of what Israel says, they have committed war crimes. That is undeniable. And it is also undeniable that the United States has a lot of leverage here. So they better stop flexing it. Even if like even if like Trump was going to be worse, and he probably was going to be worse, that's not the best argument you can make to sell to like the disgruntled pro-Palestinian, like huge pro-Palestinian base, obviously, that you have. That's not the best argument. Is like, yeah, I'm terrible, but you see, like Trump could have been worse. No, sell them. Like, work it. Like, genuinely make the argument for
The funny thing is, I genuinely can't decide whether I think that Trump would have like made it worse by also invading Iran, or Trump would have done something like, if I was in charge, October 7th wouldn't have happened. Those dead civilians, there wouldn't have been any, and then like wouldn't have done anything and just caused international outrage on a lark. You know, I genuinely don't know. He's a wild card. My instinct tells me he would be worse, but I think there was a small possibility that by being an asshole, he actually would have responded better.
No, I'll be honest.
Very slim. Let me have this purely on the wild card factor.
Oh God, I was like, yeah, I walked into the room, I spoke to Netanyahu, I don't know, like
They were at a music festival. There aren't any music festival people dying over here. I can say that much. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Like but honestly, I wouldn't want to find out.
No.
Here's the thing: I don't want to find out. So I would like the Biden administration to like actually try to start winning its voters back. So yeah, I think this was much less a discussion of the military realities on the ground. I think this was like a much more general discussion. But I'm really happy about it.
No. Well, yeah, we're well over time, but I've enjoyed it enough that I haven't even called time. I've really enjoyed it. I think, yeah. So militarily, like my impression is that the IDF is getting bogged down because it's really difficult to invade highly entrenched, dense urban areas that have had tunnels built under them. Every piece of rubble you move over could have like an IED underneath it. We experienced this, in Afghanistan, and that's the reason why past a point we left it to the ANA so they could die en masse, in the mountainside, while our soldiers stayed comfy in the capital.
And like other, like Mosul, for example, like you have other examples when like fighting ISIS in urban environments, and then you can say very clearly that, hey, when the United States was fighting ISIS in urban environments, like they clearly weren't killing as many civilians as the Israelis are right now.
Yeah,
so,
we really like it's one of those things that a lot of lefties don't get. But like, if you look at since the end of the Cold War, if you look at the way we engage in conflict, not to say we do good, the Iraq War was not good or whatever, we have fairly good standards we hold our troops to. And this is grading on a curve because it's compared to like other nations' armies. If you look at us compared to Israel or Russia, for the most part, there's a lot more care when it comes to avoiding civilian casualties. But again, like this is off a pretty bad standard. It's like,
yeah,
it's a low bar to clear.
Obviously, obviously the drone war may not be good, but like if we had to compare in terms of like standards holding soldiers to, like, I think that Israel is clearly closer to Russia than it is to the United States.
Yeah, if
countries.
If the Iraq or Afghanistan wars were hey, look, okay, we know what an invasion of Afghanistan looks like if committed by Russia. Okay, we saw this, we've been there.
That's a great example. Thank you for bringing that up. I would like to say something very briefly on that.
Absolutely.
Guys, you know what the Soviets did when they heard that a militant may have been in a village? They would annihilate it. They would annihilate it with grad fire, with artillery fire, with helicopters. They would leave nothing behind. They ended up killing 2.5 million people, like in Afghanistan. And you know what? Like people who are like justifying strikes on civilians by saying that, hey, like terrorists like may have been there. We're not gonna like prove it or anything. Even if they are, like, the Soviets could have done that very easily, actually, and you'd have to defend that. Because the Soviets would say, okay, yeah, listen, man, I had a comrade in village. I saw he had the military, they had guns. We saw guns in village. Is terrorists there? We have to destroy village. Like they will. You can like the Soviets are great comparison to how the Soviets acted in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I think it's kind of inconvenient for Israel that Russia did what they did a couple years ago, because now we have a pretty immediate basis of comparison for what it looks like when a sort of authoritarian regime engages in indiscriminate slaughter of civilians. We can point at it pretty clearly. It's like, it's very easy. God, it's only 2 months in, and it's already 16,000 dead. It's insane. Yeah,
Wait, it's October. It was October 7th, right? When this started, or
yeah. So we're 3 days off.
yeah, yeah, uh, yeah. It will be 2 months in a little bit. Yeah, it's just, I mean, this is really kind of all I have for you
No, no, I
right now.
really appreciate you coming on. It's been nice.
Thanks.
The I haven't had many conversations on this in large part because as you've said, and as I agree, the moral question in the Gaza Strip is shockingly simple. There's always logistics and particulars to discuss, and they should be discussed. But in terms of like, it's like with the invasion of Ukraine as well. It's like, okay, how complicated is it morally? Not complicated, as it turns out. It's actually very easy, good guy, bad guy dynamic. The only thing you have to do really is not attribute the actions of a military to all of the civilians
Yeah,
in that
obviously.
country, and you're set. Like that's it. That's the step you have to take, and then it's pretty simple. But I still want to
I
know more.
so I would honestly, like, I would apart from recommending to your audience to go to protests that support Palestinians. Most of the time they're really chill. It's you can hang out with friends there. You can chant a little bit if you like to do that. I'm not a great chanter. I would I would recommend that. I spoke with Loner Box recently. I was discussing with him like the military situation again in Gaza, and we spoke a little bit about indiscriminate fire on civilians. I know that Lonerbox has done like a colossal amount of research into like the history of the peace process,
Yeah, he's been
and
digging into it. He's
yeah,
he's going to
he's
talk to me
really.
soon.
Oh, great! That's what I was looking for. I was saying that like it would be very nice to see like a conversation between you two regarding like the peace process and just going over all this stuff because yeah, it is very important historical context, but you don't need to be an expert on the peace process to recognize that even if we're starting this in October 7th, the facts on the ground are like very clear, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
Hamas
Like
was invented on October 7th. Is the
yeah,
main thing you learn.
there is genuinely nothing that can really justify Israeli actions at the moment. The no terror attack can justify this kind of can justify retaliation or mass punishment of civilians or indiscriminate fire or like or like cutting off electricity, food, and like water to like 2 million people. You can't do that. It's as simple as it gets.
Yeah, no, he's
And
I'm looking forward to it because he definitely knows way more on the topic than me. I recently argued with some tard who was doing like basically every dumb
oh, I
argument you
saw
can
that.
do. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I simplified stuff and got some stuff wrong. So Lonerbox going to come on and clarify, which I'm looking forward to because I watched some of his streams and stuff, but I've been too busy lately, paying too much for clothes to to
yeah,
to watch all of them. I'm gonna get a distilled lesson.
I watched that conversation, and it was like I think it was at one point where you were talking about like the he was talking about the pullout, the unilateral pullout of Ariel Sharon, and there was a lot of confusing like back and forth where like it seemed that like you had some details fuzzy on like the history of like the peace process, but even then like even if you have the history like kind of fuzzy or you don't know exactly what's going on, like looking at this conflict right now, you can make very clear moral arguments, in my opinion. And then I also saw a discussion between Dylan Burns, which I also spoke to about like like the Gaza conflict. But I saw
Excuse me,
I
sorry.
saw a conversation. I saw a conversation between Dylan Burns and Destiny, where they were arguing about the legality of the occupation of the Golan Heights. Um,
I can
it
only guess
seems
who
that
was on whose side.
Okay, yeah, but I think that like it seems to me that Destiny is learning about what international law is on the fly. Uh,
Yeah.
which isn't great.
I don't
Like,
claim to a significant knowledge on the subject myself. It's one of the reasons why I try to stress the moral side of things, because if you get caught up in the legality, it's like you can it's I mean, I hate to simplify it, but it could also always be one of those, well, did you know the Holocaust was legal kind of deals where it turns out according to this and that is actually okay. I think that, like, obviously, morality informs law, not the other way around. It is very convenient for people on my side, though, that Israel constantly violates international law and gets
Yeah.
denounced only for the U.S. to block the denunciation because we're on the security
Yeah.
cabinet. So,
something about international law is like, okay, part of it has to do with like conventions that not all states may be parties to. Some of it has to do with like hundreds of years of legal precedent, of like conventions on like what arms are legal and illegal in war. Like, there's so many things, like parts of like the UN, the ICJ, the ICC. There are so many things that happen regarding international law, and there may be discussions on jurisdiction, saying that, like, hey, maybe like this state is not party to like X or Y treaty. That doesn't give the right to that state to just like do XYZ war crime because it's not party to that state. I don't think the United States. I think that the United States does violate international law, and if it does violate international law, like, I don't think that it can say, oh well, we're not party to the ICC, and so like whatever, we didn't violate any international law. Actually, I don't think that's a cool argument to make.
yeah, you can't
Like,
you can't really rescind yourself from legal jurisdiction. That's the whole point of legal jurisdiction.
Yeah, like if you
but the thing is, like, with legal jurisdiction, like the whole idea of international law, if you're a liberal, and if you're, I think that personally leftists should be very happy with international law, but like the idea
Yeah, I
is that,
agree.
like,
I think international law
Yeah.
actually leans really leftist in most of the times that it's invoked.
so here's the thing, right? Like, even if you can claim that a state may not like be party to a treaty or jurisdiction, the idea is that like the United States need to be supporting international law because, like, it's the problems of enforcement and the problems of universality can only be overcome if international law is strengthened. If the United States says, I don't care if like this country doesn't accept the ICC as an authority over it, it is committing war crimes, even if it's not like a party to XYZ treaty. And that's why I think that the United States should actually submit itself to the ICC and have some people who have committed war crimes in past administrations, get them a little bit,
I would love
fucking
that, as it
tried.
so happens.
Well, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
No,
Like,
I
instead of-
agree. Even the liberal world order, if you want America to be the global policeman, you have to be a part of the law yourself. If you don't regard the law means less. And international respect for international law is probably more compromised by American arrogance than anything else. There are tons of countries that'll do f***ed up stuff and go, like, why should we have to abide by these rules if America doesn't? And they should
Exactly.
abide by them, but that's also a correct argument. Like, it is kind of weird that we don't seem to abide by them, because who could stop us,
like you can't like
hand them the hypocrisy argument on a
You're
silver
giving it,
platter.
for free. For free, you're giving them something to, and likewise, like, a bunch of international law comes down to, essentially, like, how do we prevent the unlawful seizure of borders? How do we keep borders in line? Because once you start making territorial grabs, you cause issues. It happened with Crimea, with Ukraine recently. Venezuela's about to fucking do it,
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah, which the ICC denounced, if I recall correctly. Like, immediately, they were like, yeah, please don't. That's one of the big things international law does. It sets a concrete sort of set of rules for which countries start and stop where, and it's really important that be kept, because otherwise, it gets...
Yeah, there are so many aspects of international law, but the basic idea is that like international law eventually has to become universal and universally enforceable, and of course that's a very difficult ideal to reach, but you can either work towards that ideal or against that ideal. And if the United States, bucks the ICC and gives them like stuff to prosecute the Russians, but then says that they're not party to the ICC, and they have the Hague Invasion Act saying that they will like invade the Netherlands and get their boys out of there if they ever get caught, like that's not working towards international law. When they back Israel in this conflict in the manner that they are, this is not working towards the idea of international law. This hands the argument to China and Russia to say, hey, we don't care about international law, but they don't care about international law. No one cares about international law. More like international suggestion, Lamau, let me do XYZ. And anytime the Americans say anything, they can say right back to the US and be right that, hey, guys, you don't care. And then the Americans will say, well, yeah, but we do care. We have our own standards. Like, well, but you don't have the international standards. So that's the ones that matter.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why we fucked ourselves over with Iran, like nobody in the world wants Iran to start, waving around nuke dicks in the area. Like it's pretty much everyone, I think, agrees that would be really, really, really bad, just overall for national stability, and but as a consequence of America acting above the law effectively and saying, yeah, no, actually, like we'll do our treaty with you, then we'll break it, like we'll sort of passively endorse Israel, like engaging in incursions on your national autonomy with their like assassinations and their sabotage attacks. It's like, okay, well, if we're not going to play ball, why the fuck should they? And that's kind of true. It's not a good place to be in. It's a bad place to open the argument as a nation debate, bro. You don't want to be doing this.
Yeah, you don't want to be making like realist, like might makes right arguments with this, like saying, oh yeah, like what will the international like community do about it?
Shit, yeah.
Yeah, like you don't want to be doing that. Like if you believe that like the US should, like if your goal is strengthening US security or strengthening, I don't know, global like security for the greatest amount of civilians possible, you must have like the US submit itself to international laws, because nothing will strengthen its reputation more than that. Like the accusation that the US acts above international law is like old and well established, but they can very easily buck that trend right now, especially since the US less and less like overtly like bucks international law. Like the US acts nowhere near as monstrously as it was like during Kissinger years.
Yeah, no,
like,
we have genuinely shifted, and I guess it looks like Israel shifted in the other direction, which is kind of crazy. But things being what they are, so yeah, we gotta do that.
I think America has here has a real opportunity to buck the trend and move towards a really positive direction, at least in the international front. And I don't know, maybe Trump wins and everything just goes back to business as usual, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's not, that doesn't help.
That doesn't help. Maybe you turn into a fascist dictatorship in 5 years. I don't know. Like,
well, hey, listen. At least at that point, then none of this will have mattered. Okay, so it's fine
listen,
then. Actually,
I'm in Greece. I'm infinitely more.
Oh no, yeah, you're safe from fascism over there. Don't worry.
Yeah, obviously. Like, yeah, maybe no. I'm in Brussels right now, not in Greece. But anyway.
Hey, at least you're not as far along as Turkey is.
Oh yeah, those guys are not having a good time, and they may make us not have a good time soon enough. Hopefully not that soon. I don't know.
Do you think they're going to do it? There's no way.
Oh, I think that it's very, very unlikely unless a lot of things change. But that's the thing. Like, it still makes me a little nervous because I'm gonna have to go to the army next year. So,
really? Wait, is there? Are you enlisting, or is there a draft in Greece?
Draft.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we have mandatory service. All men. I was called up when I was 18. But I'm studying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could get an exemption. Technically, I could avoid it until 2027, but I don't know if things are going to be better in 2027 than they are now.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, you might want to get that done early.
Yeah, it's still, the thing is, like, it doesn't really matter because I'll be in the reserve anyway. So
So it doesn't matter if I'm in the reserve now or I'm in the reserve later. Mainly, there are so many things to consider there, and I'm really thinking about it. Maybe I don't even have to like go back to the country. Like I can just stay out and stay in Europe or do other things. I don't know.
Yeah, you can take a vacation in Cyprus, stay away from the
Yeah.
conflict.
Oh no, Cyprus is not the place to be to
Yeah,
get
it's
away
just,
from
it's
the
the weather's nice, the food's nice.
Yeah, but it's also divided. Anyway, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Yes,
Vaush,
yes.
and,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for offering your time. It's been a delight to speak to you, and I know that the people in chat feel exactly the same way.
I believe so. I will plug myself
Please.
very very quickly. I don't wait. Let me. I can put my Twitter up on the screen at least and share that. Da, 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 da.
It'll be linked in the description as well, of course.
No, never mind. I won't do that. I'll just copy paste. I'm not very good at this. I'm not very prepared to do that very often.
Well, you were prepared for the conversation. That's
Unfortunately.
the big one, right?
Yeah, that's the important part. Yeah. Anyway, I'll it's Richard Hannay 17 on Twitter, guys. And if you Google Richard Hannay or search for me on Twitter or look at my Twitch, which is twitch.tv /Richie_Hannay. You'll find me there. And of course, since we are now moots with Vaush, you can also find me through there, I guess.
That's true. Not the hardest to find.
Yes, I'm not difficult to find.
It is. It has been a delight to speak with you. I hope you have a wonderful day or night, whatever time it is over there.
I gotta go to work tomorrow morning, man. It's 1 a.m. here.
All right, all right. Get to bed. Have a good sleep, and I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Have a good one.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye-bye. That was a nice conversation. I enjoyed it as well. Yeah, I like talking to Richard. Let me close this. Anyone trying to dunk on me, please just remember that Risk of Rain is hard.